Are you considering volunteering overseas with an NGO or a non-governmental organization? Perhaps I can give you some insight, because I volunteered in 5 countries: India, Ghana, Tanzania, Peru, Colombia, between 2008 and 2012. And usually at each project, I was there for 3 months, 4 months. So it's not like I just stuck around for a few weeks and then took off. Normally I took time to see how the project was going, and I was quite enthusiastic, quite energetic, young, naive, unprepared, and essentially had no success. I had no success in any project during my travels. That's the thing. It was about travel. It was about experiencing a new culture and immersing yourself there. And eventually I got into learning languages, and it did lead to other things. I got into entrepreneurship, but originally, after university, I wanted to travel. And honestly, I was just lucky for various reasons to have the money to travel, to buy these plane tickets, and to pay these NGOs. Because let's face it, you got to pay them. Rarely can you find an NGO to volunteer for free, because you need to pay for food and housing. It's not like people can suddenly put volunteers up. I mean, yes, there's things in Africa where you can live in a mud hut for a few weeks, and I'm sure that doesn't cost much. But generally, volunteers want to live in an actual house, and a lot of the organizations are quite luxurious. Like, they'll give you dormitory-style living, but accommodation which is quite nice, spacious, full package treatment. So they'll pick you up from the airport, and they'll give you 24/7 emergency assistance during your time, at least during the time that you are registered in the program, and 3 meals a day, or at least 2 meals a day, and you will, of course, have an opportunity to volunteer. But you know, notice how I'm mentioning that later on, because it's about comfort. It's about you know, having the volunteers in a situation they enjoy, and so they stay happy and safe. And these NGOs are essentially travel agencies. So let's not kid ourselves there. It's a business. It's a big business. I don't know how many millions of dollars or even billions of dollars are, I don't know if it's billions, but certainly millions. I don't know how much is involved every year, but you know, you can do the math quite simply. If you look at some of these principal NGOs, and you go to their websites and you look at their prices, and they're charging volunteers generally between $250 US to over $1,000 US per week for some of these programs. And generally the price will decline. The weekly price will decline if you sign up for a longer period, like 2 or 3 months or half a year. Those people are more rare. You know, most people want to just travel for a short time. And it makes sense, because we're tourists, okay? We're backpackers, we're tourists. Let's not kid ourselves. We don't know how to fix the world, but it often makes us feel good to read a book to some African kids on the beach under a palm tree. You know, it makes us feel good. And we might not teach the kids anything, and but you know, we'll have an experience, and hopefully we won't make things worse. Hopefully we won't be making the community worse, but we probably, in 99.9% of the times, we won't make things better. It'll just be, oh, you know, we're in an economic flow, bringing money into those communities. So you have to realize that these NGOs, you know, I'm not saying don't volunteer. Obviously, I did a lot of that. So, I was often a fool in a circus, working on projects that were going nowhere. But at the same time, I do think I'm wiser for having had these experiences. And obviously I don't volunteer anymore, but I've started a volunteer organization in Ghana. So I can't be, you know, completely dismissing the volunteering idea. But I just think it's, you know, you got to be honest. People have to be more honest. I mean, look, why aren't you going to have an impact? Well, there's so many reasons. Well, first of all, are you really prepared to like, if you want to, usually you're going to be teaching English or math or French. So do you have schooling in that subject? Have you taken a course on teaching English? Because knowing English is not the same thing as actually being able to teach English. Because to teach English, you have to have an understanding of English grammar, and there's a lot of that. And so I taught English in 3 countries, in India, in Ghana, and Tanzania. And it was a failure in every single case, even though I was in each of those places for months at a time. And I worked with small kids in India, and 5th graders in Ghana, and young adults in Tanzania. And it wasn't until I got to the young adults in Tanzania, because they were already adults with mature questions and they were asking me about English grammar, only then did I finally realize, oh wow, I suck at this. I'm not prepared. So I may have mentioned I volunteered between 2008 to 2012 in these countries. And so this was still, what, 2010 at this time when I was in Tanzania. So at that time in 2010, I was like, okay, no more of this teaching, volunteering, no more of this working with kids or young adults, because I'm not prepared to teach right now. And but you see, the thing is, we want to travel, and I certainly wanted to travel more, and I wanted to go to Latin America, and so I volunteered there. Now, why? You may be asking, why didn't I just go backpacking? Well, when I was younger, and I hadn't, been to a developing country, it's quite intimidating, wouldn't you say? Would most people go backpacking on their own in a developing country and they'd have no experience of doing such a thing before? I would have gone with friends, but none of my friends were interested in doing that at the time. And rarely have I had friends who travel, especially to poor countries. So that's why NGOs are so appealing, because it's so easy. You just sign up online, you pay with your credit card, and it's all set up for you. And there's no preparation required. Like I was mentioning about the English teaching, there's no preparation required. Perhaps if you're a medical volunteer, you may have to be registered in a medical program, but it's generally not like. Why? Because these NGOs, you are their customer, so you're paying. They are taking money from you. So why? Who are they to be too demanding? And every year, thousands of people volunteer. I don't know. It must be more than 10,000 people. I don't know what the statistics are. Sorry, I'm not big up on doing statistics, but it's in the thousands and thousands of people from the United States, Canada, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, and a few other countries too. Like I've met Brazilians who also travel and volunteer, and so there's people from all, but generally wealthier countries. So they go to other parts of Latin America, which are more poor, and Africa, India. That's mainly where they go. They go to these countries, and they want to have an experience, like I said, and you do get that, because despite failing in so many ways, I did get to see India, and I got to travel around there, and same for Ghana, and same for Tanzania, and hike mountains and go through jungles, and that's great, especially as a young person. You want to have that stimulation. And I mean, I'm from Toronto, Canada, so it's a pretty bland, boring city to live in. So it's nice to get away. And after I went to Peru, in South America, at that point, I had mentioned that I can't teach anymore because this is ridiculous. But I worked on a construction project, and I studied Spanish. Getting into the studying Spanish, that's another topic. That's languages, but it was good to start doing something different. And that construction project, well, there were two. There was one working on a greenhouse at an orphanage, and another building a primary school in the hills above the famous tourist town of Cusco, Peru. Everyone has to go to Cusco. Oh, it's like everyone has to go. It's a big. So of course, inevitably, I ended up there, living in Cusco, and it's an interesting place and very high altitude. But the greenhouse project was essentially, that was a failure. I mean, I'm pretty sure the greenhouse collapsed not long after we finished it, and we spent many weeks working on it. However, working on the primary school, I must say that's the only case in all my volunteering experiences that we appeared to actually get something done. Like we really did. The school really was more or less finished, and it opened for classes, and I got to see the students there. However, that was only because we had someone on the ground directing us, a foreman from Peru, and he was a great guy, but he made all the difference. Without him, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere. And that's the case normally with volunteers. If you don't have someone really to be right there with you, directing you, guiding you, a lot of these people, including myself, we're not going to get anywhere. Okay, so that's why I didn't get anywhere in the school in India, because I thought I would be assisting the teachers in the school in India, but they saw me as a replacement. They just put you in there, so you're on your own, right? So if you don't have any prior experience, you're probably going to be floundering for some time before you start to figure out anything you can do. And before a few months goes by, I mean, let's face it, it's not like you're going to... I'm getting back to the teaching here, I know, but I mean, the other thing is the education system is different in these countries. So it's just rote learning. Rote learning, memorize the alphabet, memorize the numbers, certain other things, and then basically obey adults. Those are the two things you have to learn. And then there's physical violence, a lot of physical violence, teachers beating students in India and Ghana. So that's quite normal. If you're not used to seeing that, that might be troubling for you. And of course, trying to talk to the NGO, it's like, well, you know, what can you do? And I was an anthropology student, so you know, I studied cultural anthropology, so I ought to have known. Well, I would have known better, but they still can't prepare you for trying to adjust to a different education system. And then when you see these beatings, and my students in Ghana would be beaten frequently, dozens of students at a time. The whole school, half the school might be beaten because they didn't pay their school fees. Usually, that's the main thing. And so that was a huge disruption for learning. But then again, you know, they're teaching you to obey the adults. So, or who knows? Who knows what that accomplishes? But so these are other frustrations you may run up into if you are considering volunteering abroad. So I'm not trying to turn you off of it. I'm saying you're definitely going to get your stimulation. You're definitely going to have a great experience. But just don't think that, you know, you should be humble, right? You probably, hopefully you won't make things worse for anyone. Hopefully you won't be like perpetuating some sort of child slavery ring where the whole school is actually a slave and they bring them out just to give you the illusion that you're doing. I mean, that's a little extreme, but you know, there are these stories, you know, you never know. I don't think it's quite that bad, you know, doing the things I did. I just think generally you don't get anywhere, and you shouldn't kid yourself about that in terms of, this is not like a humanitarian initiative. This is not the Peace Corps, okay? Back in the past, when you would sign up to the Peace Corps, you were kind of locked into it for a year or 2 years, or so. That's, you know, you really had to adjust, and learning the language is one of the main things. You know, volunteers rarely speak any of the language of the country they end up in. Thankfully, by the time I got to Peru, Latin America, I was starting to figure out, okay, language is pretty important. So, and thankfully, Spanish is not that hard to learn if you are an English speaker. It's probably about the easiest language you could possibly study as an English speaker. So that helped a lot, and you made the experience a lot more richer in Peru. Now, I also volunteered in the rainforest in Peru, and it was this conservation project. And I was a bit more jaded at this point about volunteering, but I did want the experience of being in the rainforest and living there. So why not go again? Why not go with an NGO? Because it's you know, they'll give you something to do. And they said you could make trails in the forest with a machete, and that just sounded like the most exhilarating thing imaginable. And when I showed up there after a 7 or 8 hour bus ride from Cusco, because it has to go down the mountains, when I arrived, you have to skip across the river in the zip line across quite a fast-flowing river, and there's their little station where they have the kind of like a platform by the riverside with it's all open, but you know, there's a roof, and that's where they have the beds, and then they have other separate buildings in kind of like an area about, 2 acres wide, where they have an eating area, and that's pretty much it, because it's right by the side of this mountain. But as soon as I arrived there, I could see that things were kind of weird, because all these hippie-looking people were there, and they weren't very friendly. They were like these Spanish hippies, but just not very friendly ones. They didn't had anything to say to me, and like no one introduced them. So I was just kind of standing there like an idiot. And but eventually, they showed me where I could sleep. And but yeah, it was a really weird place. And I was prepared to have spent like multiple weeks there. But after a few days, I was starting to think, I don't know if I can do this, because this is like, I don't think I can manage more than a week here. So why? Because, well, first of all, there was nothing going on. There was no actual work happening. This is all practically a sham. Like, we would go into the jungle for more than 2 or 3 hours. That's it. And then people would be just sitting around and lounging in the sun, which is great, and then spotting birds. I mean, so this was a retreat. So let's not kid ourselves. It's a retreat. That's okay. I mean, that's fine. I don't think it was destroying the Amazon. They were doing some things, but I mean, yeah, not the most efficient way to go. And the sad thing is that I wanted to be in the rainforest. I liked using the machete. It was exhilarating. It really was. And but I wasn't so stupid to go in there on my own. And I mean, and plus these like socially awkward hippies, or whatever you want to call them, they were really rude to me at times for no reason. Like, they were really, we weren't supposed to cut palms, which I know is important. You have to leave the palms alone when you're clearing a trail. But this was literally like just the first time I had been in the jungle, and the first time we'd done this. So I accidentally may have cut a small palm, like a small seedling, and I just got totally yelled at by this. Well, she was a lesbian, but I don't know if she hated me because I was a man or not. Sorry, but I don't know. She was a really angry young lady, and she was so angry that she just started speaking Spanish, but she was from Spain, so with that kind of Iberian accent, just like, why did you cut this? Oh my God. It was a horrible moment. I'm obviously a sensitive person, you may guess, because I'm very sensitive, expressive, so, I'm not going to forget that. But, I was able to put things in perspective, because there were a lot of socially inept people there, and angry people. Like, I remember the guy who was running it, Alvaro, another guy from Spain. I don't know why there are all these, like, people from Spain in this particular part of the Peruvian Amazon. And he was just like, when he heard I was going back to Cuzco, he's like, what did he say? He's like, that place is Babylon. That's all Babylon. Oh, you're going back to the Sierra. Okay, I agree. Cuzco's not a pretty town. Cuzco's kind of an ugly town, a lot of it. Not, I mean the modern part of it, not the old part. But you know what, Alvaro? Fuck you. I'd rather be back in civilization. And you know what? Fuck you, Amazon. You're trying to kill me with the mosquitoes biting me all the time, and the jungle wants to eat you, okay? That's what you have to understand. No, I'm serious. We do need the Amazon. It is the lungs of the planet. But I'm just saying, when you actually get there, you realize how scary it really is. And it's trying to kill you. It's just trying to eat you. So 8 days really was good for me. I was like, I'm good. I'm okay. And I can go back to Cuzco now. And obviously, so by that point I was pretty overall jaded with volunteering, but I was able to convince myself to volunteer one more time in Colombia, maybe a year later. This would have been near the end of 2012. And so I flew this was with another different NGO. And I bring up the Colombia trip because I had also signed up for construction and renovation somewhere in a suburb of Bogota, the capital city of Colombia, in northwestern South America. And upon showing up, again, it's like, oh my, what the fuck is going on here? Because as soon as we get picked up from the airport, it's like, where are we going? We're driving through the city. Can we just go home? It's like, oh, we have to drop off this girl. And so this lady, Monica, I shouldn't say any names here. I'm trying to, not say any names. So I may have let something slide there, but I didn't say any full name there. And I don't name any of these NGOs because they're businesses and I respect them, because I'm not trying to, disparage them, and they're just businesses. I'm just trying to tell you it's a business, so I don't want to name any of these organizations, but I also want you to be wary. I'm just trying to say be wary. So you can find a lot of these NGOs very commonly on the internet, and it's okay. You can sign up with them. You'll probably be safe. Well, yeah, you will be safe the more money you pay, for sure. But your money is going towards paying the drivers who pick you up, the cooking staff, the program officers who organize your volunteering, and it's mostly like a travel agency. They might even take you on excursions, and they'll give you time to travel on your own. That's the thing. You can take time off, and they can never be too demanding of you. Like I said, with the preparatory requirements, there are none, other than being 18 and hopefully not having a criminal record. But even then, like, I don't know if they check criminal records. I mean, some of them do, but I mean, you never know. But basically, you have to be 18 and you have to have enough money to pay, buy your plane ticket, get visas, get some vaccinations. You know, a few simple things and you're good to go. This is what I was saying in the beginning. It's like, it's quite convenient. This is why so many people sign up to do it. It's just so easy. You can find it online, and just your adventure is taken care of. So, but getting back to Colombia, this was a lot sparser. This was not like the other NGO. And I should say, when I was in India, Ghana, Tanzania, I was with a particular NGO that offered, that basically a lot of these big NGOs are, very wealthy, and they, well, I don't want to call them very wealthy, but they have big offices. And they have offices in a home country, probably in a developed country, and so they have to pay all those office workers, and that office registers you and then connects you and sends you, or well, it's your choice, but they have a connection with their home country operations in the developing countries, and those home country operations are where you actually go to do your volunteer work, and then have to provide you with housing usually and feed you. I mean, it depends. I mean, sometimes people who sign up for cheaper programs, like, oh, I'll take care of my own food and I'll get my own. It's like, sure, you can do that. I mean, but it depends on what your comfort level is, and it's probably safer in a developing country to go with someone who's going to take care of you in that full package way, at least in the beginning. I mean, obviously when I went to Ghana, I needed that, and especially in a place like Ghana. But I ended up making a good friend with a Ghanaian, and then I moved in with his family, and then now I'm an entrepreneur there. So obviously but in the beginning, obviously I had to have some compound to live in, because you are a different person in these countries, especially in a place like Ghana or India. Let's not kid ourselves that we're from the West and we stand out, whether or not for our skin color. They can usually tell by the way you dress, and just as they can tell, like, even though there's white people in South America, I mean, they can tell that I'm not a white person from South America. That's just, they look at me and can see right away, partially because I'm 6 feet tall and people are shorter there. So you really are going to stand out, whether you're a man or a woman. And I should mention that I was always feeling kind of strange, because it was usually like me and I was practically the only male volunteer. It's like mostly females volunteer, and it tends to be all ages. And sure, I met lots of men that were pretty cool, and but generally it's all a very female thing. And it's not cool to say, oh, you just did that because you wanted to meet women. It's like, no, that's not why I signed up to volunteer, not to meet other Western women. That ended up happening, but no, I had no romantic or any relationship or any thing sexual. Nothing. I will admit to you, nothing came of that for me, because that's not. That's not my personality. But that's funny. It was a funny situation to be in, especially as a young man. And so if you're a man, if you're a male considering volunteering, at least get that into your head. I may be housing with just females, and I mean, you'll have your own room, but you will be every day with others. So it depends on what you're used to. You have to consider that. So it's great for women, and especially they like to do it in their friends and go for a few weeks, and yeah, they often travel in groups. Not always, but that's common. So now I've totally missed what I was saying about Colombia. I kept going off on these tangents, but really it is the cap of the story. What happened in Colombia, just simply that it was a sham. Simply that there was no program, so I was duped. And there was no construction and renovation program. There was some things going on, but literally there was no foreman there half the time. He was supposed to be there, but wouldn't show up, and there was really nothing going on. I don't need to go into detail here, but it was just the sort of situation where they make up something for you to do. Like, oh, go build a fence to keep out these dogs by this orphanage. We need this, and it's not going to do anything, and that's the sort of situation where I really realized that, wow, I'm just a fool in a circus here. And I end up getting into an argument, a fight with the lady who was running this organization, and I called her out on everything. I was like, this is a sham, what you're doing here, and this is misrepresentation. And also, the housing was bad. You've crammed 16, it was like 14 or 16 of us volunteers into a apartment with only 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, and there's poor ventilation in this tall apartment building, and so no wonder people are getting colds. No wonder it's moist in there, and your towel never dries, and you're only feeding us 2 meals a day instead of 3. And some of the meals are just not nearly sufficient in terms of calorie intake. And I'm a thin guy, so some people may be surprised to find that thin people eat a fuckload, and I did. So I was complaining about all of these things, and she was just like an ice lady. Oh man, it was terrible. She's like, so I literally had to get out of that apartment after 2 weeks. Like I'd signed up for 3 weeks, but it's like, this is ridiculous. Now I did work in a soup kitchen serving food to homeless people. That was interesting, and I don't mind doing that. But that's not what I signed up for. So I feel like we were duped. I was duped. And there was a different NGO, one charging a bit cheaper, only $250 a week. So this NGO is based in another country, a developed country, and they just act as an intermediary. So you see, it's a bunch of intermediaries. There may be an intermediary in the developed country who takes the volunteers online and then hooks them up with the in-country operations, and then you go there. And then that actual in-country operation is itself another intermediary, you see, because it's just a place where you live, and it's just an administration. But they are not, rarely, in my experience, is that in-country place where you are sent actually a place for you to volunteer. It's not actually a hospital. It's not actually a clinic, a school, a daycare. It's none of those things. They just have someone who has branched out to these actual partner organizations, and that's what we mean by the place where you actually go to volunteer. The partner organization. So that would be the school where I volunteered in Ghana. That was a private school that had partnered with the NGO. And again, emphasizing that this is just an experience thing for the tourists. You're not going to have any real effect on the kids. You might, you're going to befriend a kid, and that's great, and you'll, that's so emotionally beneficial. But in terms of humanitarian, measurable progress, you're probably not going to have any effect. Like, this kid now has a better math score on his test. He now understands arithmetic better. No, let's be honest, probably not going to happen unless you're willing to spend a year or 2 years doing this, which is why probably Peace Corps required people to spend that much time in the past, right? So you can't get anything done in 2 weeks. Are you kidding? Can't get anything done. But you should look at it as a learning experience. So you will learn something. Maybe you'll start to say, oh, okay, so they have a certain problem here. All right. So you can at least if you're humble and open-minded, then you can at least immerse yourself and try to go with the flow, so you're not making things worse, and hopefully you're not a criminal with anything bad intent. And then I don't think it's a bad thing that people from the West want to go to these countries. That's that's perfectly all right. That's what we in the West like to do. We've always been an adventurous people. We've always been curious, and you know, we have this misplaced guilt because we exploited the rest of the world. But I think enough of us are mature enough and wise enough now in 2016 to finally realize that you know, the West has been pretty successful, and we're going through kind of a tough phase right now. But we never have to consider volunteering abroad because we're guilty for something that went on in the past, whether it's slavery, whether it's like that. It's like that's not a nice place to come from. It's misguided. It's not really in touch with reality. But anyways, that's another subject. I can talk about that more in another video. I'm just trying to educate you about volunteering with NGOs. I'm saying, you know, sure, go do it, but don't be taken for a fool. At least don't trust everything you read on the website beforehand. And so do your research when you can, and then realize that even the most trusted NGOs are really little more than travel agencies, and there's nothing wrong with travel agencies. So just look at it that way, and at least then you can be more humble and open-minded, and emerge a little wiser from the process, rather than kind of being a fool in a circus, or what do they say, being on the path to hell with good intentions. Oh, I don't think that metaphor really worked there, but you know what I mean. They say like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. There's some truth in that. I don't think I ended up in hell in a lot of these places, but I generally failed. Like, I failed. I'm making this video, if anything, to tell you that I volunteered a heck of a lot and basically failed in every case. Even in the case with the Peruvian school that we built. I mean, we'd never really met the people that school was meant for, and we won't meet them in the future. So it's all based on this faith that things are going to work out fine. And in any case, even with the foreman actually being there, which was unusual, they, you know, we were still very inefficient, very unprepared. This is not an effective way to develop the world. Of course, in another video, I've mentioned that I believe in capitalism, and I don't mean big corporations. I mean in actually helping people, or letting people help themselves. And that means entrepreneurs. That means building up a middle class, which keeps wealth in the country, which invests in the country. And then you'll get all these other things that you want, like better literacy and better healthcare, all these things. How do you expect that to happen when people are poor in a peasant economy? It's never going to change unless people change themselves. That means infrastructure, all these other things that volunteering cannot produce, but we can learn and we can make friends and perhaps even get involved ourselves in these countries on a more long-term basis. Then we may be actually talking something reasonable there. But that's another discussion. So all this, let's not be too negative about volunteering with NGOs, because I do think, I mean, I never would have been in the position to do what I'm doing without that option. So, you know, and like I said, I'm practically getting into it myself in Ghana after everything that I've been lucky to experience over there. So it's a very complicated subject, but I hope you understand that you have to be careful and when you sign up, and I wish you all the best if that's what you're looking to do. And if you have volunteered, I hope you're either well, not too cynical like me, but I hope you're not too like, I hope you didn't think it was like so fluffy and great and unicorns, because I like to kind of, you know, dismiss that kind of stuff. So, oh Jesus, I'm rambling here. I do believe I've communicated my general idea. Okay, YouTube, amigos, hasta luego.